Hey everyone, welcome to Brightlayer UI's Q2 2022 release presentation. What we have on the agenda for today is updates for what we've done all of last quarter. So this involves our any React resource updates, updates to our documentation site, information about educational materials for developers as well as designers through the form of BLUI Bootcamps, and a list of our package releases as well as our next steps for the following quarters and long-term plans. So Suraj is up first, and he's going to give an overview of what updates are new on the React side.
Thank you, Evan. Last quarter, we updated all of our React resources to support React version 18 and Material UI version 5. This quarter, styles are switched from JSS to use Emotional Style Engine. Material UI has deprecated the use of JSS, where we had to use theme hook and make style for each and everything. Emotion is a library designed for writing CSS style with JavaScript. We expanded all of our React resources to support SX Pro, which allows us more ways to style our component in apps. And theme can be directly accessible using SX Pro. We don't need to import hooks here, and we can also target nested styling for internal components without writing class for everything. We also converted some of our complex React components to use style components. So here is the link for that. You can also follow our link to read more about customizing BLUI React component styles. On the right hand side, you can see the example for style updates using SX Pro. Then next, Evan will walk you through the docs site updates. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Suraj. So for our documentation site, we have a design pattern section around graphs and visualizations. In that section, we have a charting library recommendation for web frameworks that we support, but not for React Native. Since we were recommending Chart.js and HighCharts for the web, we originally noticed that there was a HighCharts wrapper available for React Native called React Native HighCharts wrapper, but unfortunately that library isn't maintained anymore. So this quarter, we had to do some research to find a new recommendation. We cross-referenced GitHub and NPM activity, spent some time doing some proof of concept implementations, and now we are formally recommending Victory Native as a good mobile charting alternative. A little bit about Victory Native: it's an open source, actively maintained charting library that has common graph variants, supports common graph variants. While it doesn't have as many customization options as a web-only library like HighCharts, it's a good option to consider while making a React Native application. We've updated our doc site with a little bit more information about that, as well as included a link to it in our slide deck and release notes. So what we have up next is the Brightlayer UI Bootcamp. So what exactly is a Brightlayer UI Bootcamp? It's a series of educational materials, presentations, meetings around what Brightlayer UI is, what resources we offer, what our NPM packages are, where our component libraries are located, what components we support, basically anything that has to do with what Brightlayer UI is and what we're all about and what resources we have to offer. So this quarter, we spent some time making our educational material around our first bootcamp, and next quarter we will be opening up registration for anyone who's interested in learning more about what Brightlayer UI is and how to get started. These sessions that we have will be available on Eaton University as well as YouTube, so that's just something to look out for next quarter. And Wayun can go a little bit more into the design side.
Thank you very much, Ivan. So we just talked a little briefly about this bootcamp overview material, but they are slightly more geared for developers. what about the new designers? Fortunately, this past quarter, we have just released this new Figma Design Resource Introduction material for all the new designers. So whenever you hire a new UI UX designers, especially if they are Figma users, they're definitely gonna want to take a look into this material. So if you have a look at the next slide, in this document, we included basic information about Bright Layer UI. We talk about what Bright Layer UI has to offer for new designers. We included a step-by-step guide for how to onboard your new designers. And finally, how to request features so that your awesome design can make their way into the Bright Layer UI. This file is a Figma community file, meaning that anybody from anywhere inside or even outside Eden can start to download it and take a look at it and play with it before they formally start on their day one as a UI UX designer. Back to you, Ivan.
Hey, thanks, Wai-Yun. Okay, in this next section, I can go over all of the packages that we released for this quarter. So all of our packages are hosted on NPM, and I can kind of quickly run through what we released for this quarter. So on the Angular side, there were bug fixes for drawer, empty state, and user menu components. For the Angular themes, there were bug fixes as well as small style tweaks. And there was also a bug fix in the Angular authentication workflow. On the React side, as Suraj mentioned before, we spent a lot of time working with the MUI V5 style engine. So all of our React resources were updated and new packages were published around that. So there were new packages published for React components, all of our React templates to get started with new projects, as well as our React authentication workflow. And in the code standards domain, our ESLint config was updated with a small rule change. All right, what we have planned out for next steps. So we break our next steps down into short-term and long-term goals. As we did mention before also, next steps around BLUI Bootcamp registration will be opened. So that's something to look out for next quarter. And there will be some educational sessions happening. And also our BLUI Bootcamp's educational materials will be posted on YouTube and Eden University. So that'll be happening in next quarter. And also for a short-term goal, next quarter, we will be rewriting our component documentation sites. So a little bit more context around this is this quarter, we did spend some time designing a new documentation site for components. Originally, we hosted all of our component libraries within an application called Storybook, but we found ourselves fighting the Storybook template just a bit, and we wanted to do more customization around the look and feel of it. So next quarter, we will be implementing these new designs that we came up with this quarter for our React and Angular component libraries. Longer term goals include developing a way for adopter teams to contribute, but with lower barriers to entry back into Bright Layer UI. We call this environment a BLUI lab. So typically, whenever adopters want to contribute back into our library, there are higher barriers to entry. We take a look at whether or not their contributions were extensively documented, extensively tested, whether or not the components that they want to contribute back are going to be immediately usable by multiple projects and really provide a certain amount of value back into the design system. Well, the Bright Layer UI lab is meant to encourage active contributions and more experimental components. So for the next quarter, this is something that we're going to be setting up, and we're looking to work with active or multiple teams to see if they have any contributions that they would like to share with Bright Layer UI and potentially other teams across Eden. All right, and that about wraps it up. Thanks, everyone. This was the R22 release presentation. If there's any questions or comments about any of the material in this presentation, feel free to contact us at brightlayerui@eden.com. And we'll see you at the next one. All right, see you, everyone.